Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why in how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I want to start out with my man, my home slice, Charles Darwin. Now, we've all heard about adaptability with Charles Darwin, but I came across a quote. And it's one of those quotes you read and you go, let me read that again. And I said, I got to explore this one a little further. Here's the quote by Charles Darwin. In the long history of humankind, those who learned to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Let me say it again, and then let's break this apart, and I'll talk to you about why this statement just made me go, let me think about that. Again, in the long history of humankind, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Now, the word that caught me here was the word and. It said those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Putting those two together, those who've learned to collaborate and improvise. Collaborate and improvise. Now, this is interesting. Because as individuals, you yourself, as an individual, you have the ability to adapt, pivot, switch, change it up because it's your decision, right? It's your decision to make. You only have to consult yourself to determine whether you want to adapt or die, right? You have the choice. You can make the choice on the spot right there. It's your choice. But when you're working with a team, and this is the part about collaborate. Learn to collaborate. If I break down collaborate, it means to work with others. How can I be adaptive and improvise if I got to work with others? That's not easy. That's not easy. To be able to collaborate and improvise is not an easy task, as most managers will tell you. So how does this statement really apply? What is it really telling us? It's telling us that if you try to go it alone, you're not going to get along. You're not going to go very far. And we know this, right? Especially if you work for a company. If you work for a company, you just can't do things on your own. You really have to recruit other people to be part of your team. But even if you recruit other people to be part of your team, how do you facilitate improvisation? In other words, how do you facilitate flexibility? That's not easy. Because the more people you have in your team to collaborate with, the more opinions you have, the more you have to, convince others to maybe pivot with you if you have a certain viewpoint. But I think this is powerful in the sense that those who survive are those who collaborate and improvise. Makes sense. Because if you can't get a team, let's say a herd, a group, to move quickly and nimbly. You ever see a school of fish? School of fish are interesting to me because they can turn on a dime. They can turn very quickly. But if I show you a fleet of destroyers, that's not going to happen, right? They can't turn on a dime. A fleet of destroyers or submarines will take probably 5 miles to make a turn, just to turn right. Fish, a school of fish can turn very quickly because everybody's on the same page, so to speak. So how does this apply to selling? In the selling, it's all about collaboration. Now I'm going to give it a different spin here. When I'm talking to a client, I am really trying to collaborate. Now, this is key. I'm trying to collaborate with this customer, especially if it's a B2B sale. I'm trying to collaborate. I'm trying to share ideas. I'm hoping the other person will share ideas with me. And as we're going back and forth, I'm hoping that we can find common ground or reach some type of an agreement. Now, I know from my days in selling that if I can get, this was always one of my tricks, if I can get a decision maker to draw on the board with me or on a flip chart, when I was designing a system, I said, okay, here's kind of how I see it. And a decision maker or influencer would go, nah, that's not how I see it. I would say, how do you see it? And I would hand them the marker, and then they would start drawing with me. And we'd be up there drawing things together. And every time I did that, I closed 9 out of 10 deals, if not better. So I knew that getting people to collaborate with you, to really get involved in how something is going to be rolled out or what products to buy is important. That's how I would use collaboration. That's how I understood Darwin's quote. How can I collaborate with my client, my potential client, so that we can kind of get on the same page in terms of what needs to get done? Now, the improvisation piece is like, let's go ahead and start anticipating what might happen. So if this happens, let's go ahead and improvise. Let's work together. And we always had this open dialogue and communication. With my customers, we know that, look, we're going to put this system in place. Let's say it's a software system. We're going to put it in place. We've collaborated. We kind of agreed this is what we want to do. But we also had the understanding that once we implement this thing, there's always unforeseen situations that we're going to have to deal with. And at that moment, we're going to have to be able to improvise. Now, again, that's why I love this statement. It's kind of a contradiction, but it isn't. When you're working with a large group, I think it's really hard to collaborate and improvise. When you're working with a large group, it's not hard to collaborate. But to improvise, get everybody on the same page and agree is not an easy task. But when you're talking one-on-one to a customer, I think this really applies. How do I collaborate with my potential customer? And how do we improvise together if something doesn't go according to plan? Because something always does go not in our favor. Doesn't go right. So we have to be able to improvise. So keep this in mind when you're dealing with a client. How can you collaborate? Imagine your mindset, how you would shift it if you moved from selling the client on an idea to collaborating with them. For example, one more time, I'm selling you a CRM system, a customer relationship management system, right, to track all your leads. Imagine having that type of dialogue with the customer where we're trying to collaborate as to how best to use the system. I would ask questions like, how do you see this being used within your company? What functionalities are not going to be used? What are going to be used? Which ones are going to be used? And how can we get people to use it? Because remember, sometimes it's not about getting people to use it. It's about creating the right habits so they'll begin to use it. But remember, just imagine having that type of conversation with your clients where it's not about trying to sell. It's us trying to collaborate on whether my product will help your company. That's all I'm trying to do here, Mr. Customer. I just want to know if my product can help your customer and your business. Let's talk about it, right? Let's go back and forth and let's see how we can make this work for both of us. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. But if it does work, that's even better. And then with the anticipation that, once we implement the system, Mr. Customer, there's always going to be unintended consequences, unforeseen situations, but let's have an agreement. We're just going to adjust as we see these things coming. We're here to support you 24/7, 365. You get the idea. So what I want you to do is keep that in mind that, again, when you listen to Darwin's quote, in the history of humankind, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. You as a salesperson will prevail if you learn how to collaborate and improvise with your customer. And that is the point of this podcast. Anyway, that is it for the Sales Influence Podcast. I hope that wasn't too preachy. Don't forget to leave me some feedback on iTunes or Stitcher. Let me know what you think. I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, when you get a chance, if you haven't already, check out the Sales Velocity Academy, my online platform that continues to grow. If you're serious about selling more faster, check out the salesvelocityacademy.com. That's salesvelocityacademy.com. Lastly, I want to thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.